Family helps family. My brother Marcus texted me while I was 7,000 miles away in Afghanistan. The message came with a photo of my 2019 Mustang GT being loaded onto a flatbed truck. Sold your car to cover some debts. You'll understand when you get back. My name is Nathan Harley. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a communications specialist with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, stationed at Fob Shank. I'd been deployed for 4 months when I received that text at 0300 local time. I stared at my phone in the dim light of my bunk, watching my $45,000 car disappear onto that truck, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, something much more dangerous. Clarity. I simply typed back, "Understood." Then I set my phone aside, laced up my boots, and went to work my shift. My bunkmate Rodriguez noticed I was quieter than usual, but in our line of work, everyone respects when someone needs space to process bad news from home. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd already anticipated this moment. My younger brother had been gambling for years, and I'd seen the warning signs before I deployed. What he also didn't know was that I'd taken certain precautions, legal ones, that would make his theft considerably more complicated than he'd bargained for. I met my brother Marcus when our parents died in a car accident 12 years ago. I was 17, he was 15, and we only had each other. I enlisted the day after I turned 18. Not because I was running away, but because someone had to provide stability. The military gave me structure, purpose, and most importantly, steady income to support us both. For years, I sent Marcus money for school, for rent, for whatever he needed. When he graduated high school, I bought him a laptop for college. When he dropped out sophomore year, I didn't lecture him, just kept sending the monthly checks. When he moved back to our hometown of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I helped him get an apartment. I thought I was being a good big brother. The first red flag came 3 years ago when Marcus asked to borrow $5,000 for business opportunities. I wired the money the same day. The second red flag was 6 months later when he needed another $3,000 for unexpected expenses. I sent it without question. The third, fourth, and fifth red flags followed in rapid succession. Always urgent, always for reasonable sounding emergencies. It wasn't until my last leave, 6 months before this deployment, that I discovered where the money was really going. I found Marcus at the Prairie Meadows Casino at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, down $800 at a blackjack table, sweating through his shirt. When he saw me, his face went white. "Nathan, I can explain." I drove him home in silence. The next morning, I sat him down at his kitchen table and laid out bank statements I'd printed. Over 2 years, I'd sent him $23,400. Not $1 had gone to legitimate expenses. "You have a problem," I said quietly. "It's not that bad," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "I win sometimes. Last month I was up $2,000. And then?" Silence. I didn't lecture him. Instead, I did what I always do. I planned. I researched gambling addiction treatment programs, found 3 good options in Iowa, and offered to pay for whichever one he chose. Marcus nodded, said he'd think about it, and promised things would change. They didn't. If anything, they got worse. 2 weeks before my deployment, I noticed charges on my credit card that I hadn't made. Small amounts, testing the waters. When I confronted Marcus, he broke down crying, admitted he'd memorized my card number, and begged forgiveness. I changed all my passwords and card numbers that day. But I also did something else. I went to the Cedar Rapids Police Department and filed what's called a preventive report. Sergeant Williams, a veteran himself, listened to my concerns about my brother's gambling addiction and my upcoming deployment. "Smart thinking," he said. "This gives us documentation if anything happens while you're overseas. What exactly are you worried about?" "My car," I said. "It's the only valuable thing I own that he has access to." Sergeant Williams made detailed notes about the 2019 Mustang GT, VIN number, mileage, custom modifications I'd made, everything. He also documented my brother's gambling history and previous thefts. "The title's in your name only?" he asked. "Yes, sir, and I've got it in a safe deposit box at First National." "Good. If anything happens, call us immediately." I also moved my car to a secure storage facility across town, paid 6 months in advance, and told Marcus I'd sold it to a collector who was keeping it in climate-controlled storage until I returned. I gave my brother a story about needing the money for deployment expenses. "Makes sense," he said, and I could see the relief in his eyes. One less temptation removed from his reach. Except I'd also done something else, something Marcus would discover too late. I'd arranged for my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to let me keep the car in her garage instead. Mrs. Chen was a retired teacher who'd known our family for years. She agreed to check on it weekly and had my number if anything seemed wrong. "That boy's heading for trouble," she told me when I explained the situation. "You're wise to be careful." What Marcus sold wasn't my car. It was a 2008 Mustang I'd bought for $8,000 specifically for this purpose. A battered, high-mileage decoy with enough surface resemblance to fool someone in a hurry. I'd parked it in my usual spot at the apartment complex, left the spare key where Marcus could find it, and waited. 3 days after receiving his text, I called Sergeant Williams from the secure phone at Fob Shank. "He took the bait," I reported. "The decoy car?" Yes, sir. He sold it to someone named Jake Morrison for $12,000, according to the paperwork I found online. Posted it on Facebook Marketplace as, "Military brother needs quick sale due to deployment." Sergeant Williams was quiet for a moment. "That's still theft, you know? Doesn't matter if it wasn't the car he thought it was." "I know. How do you want to proceed?" "I'll pick him up this afternoon. The gambling angle makes this interesting. If he's got your money on him when we find him, it strengthens the case considerably." That evening, I received another call from Sergeant Williams. "We got him at Prairie Meadows," he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Had $11,400 in cash spread across 3 different casino accounts, plus another $600 in his wallet. Tried to tell us it was his own money until we showed him the Facebook messages between him and the buyer. What did he say then? Started crying, asked if you knew. When I told him you'd reported the car stolen 3 days ago, he went quiet real fast. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. What happens now? Grand theft charges. Since it's a motor vehicle, it's a felony. He's looking at 2 to 5 years if convicted, though first-time felonies sometimes get pled down. Depends on if he's willing to make restitution and get treatment. That night, I called my commanding officer and requested emergency leave to handle family legal matters. Captain Morrison, no relation to the car buyer, had been in the Army for 15 years and understood family complications. "How long do you need?" he asked. 2 weeks should handle it. Approved. These things have a way of getting messier if you don't deal with them quickly. The flight home felt longer than any mission I'd ever been on. Not because I was anxious to see Marcus. I wasn't. But because I knew this conversation would determine the rest of our relationship. I landed at O'Hare at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday and drove straight to Cedar Rapids. Marcus had been released on bail, posted by our Aunt Karen, and was staying at her house per court order. I arrived at 6 a.m. and knocked on the door. Aunt Karen answered, her face showing the strain of the past week. "Nathan, I'm so glad you're here. He's not doing well." I found my brother at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the 4 months since I'd deployed. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." I sat down across from him. "Tell me everything." The story came out in pieces. Marcus had been gambling online while I was gone, losing larger and larger amounts. When his credit ran out, he'd started eyeing my car. He'd driven past the storage facility several times, trying to work up the courage to break in, but the security was too good. Then he'd noticed what he thought was my car, parked at the apartment complex. The spare key was exactly where he remembered I kept it. He'd convinced himself I wouldn't mind, that he'd replace the money before I returned, that it was just a temporary solution. "I never thought you'd report it stolen," he said. "We're family." "Family doesn't steal from family," I replied. "And family especially doesn't steal from family members who are deployed and can't protect their property." Marcus looked genuinely shocked. "You really think I stole from you?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the Facebook Marketplace listing. "Military brother needs quick sale due to deployment," I read aloud. "You used my service to make the buyer feel sorry for you. You made them think they were helping a deployed soldier by buying his car." The color drained from his face. "I didn't think about it like that. That makes it worse, not better." We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Marcus asked, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to get help," I said. "Real help. Not promises or half measures. Inpatient treatment for 90 days, followed by ongoing counseling and Gamblers Anonymous. And if I do that, I'll ask the prosecutor to consider a plea agreement that focuses on restitution and treatment rather than prison time." Marcus nodded, slowly. "And if I don't?" "Then you go to trial, probably get convicted, and serve 2 5 years in state prison. Either way, the gambling stops." The next morning, I met with Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen, Mrs. Chen's daughter, as it turned out. Small world in Cedar Rapids. "Your brother's case is interesting," she said, reviewing the file. "The preventive report you filed shows premeditation on your part, but also establishes a pattern of concern about his behavior." "I was trying to protect us both," I said. "It worked. We've got a solid case. Theft, fraud, even identity theft, since he impersonated you in the sale listing. But given his lack of prior record and family circumstances, I'm willing to consider alternatives to incarceration." She outlined the plea agreement. Marcus would plead guilty to theft in the 3rd degree, a misdemeanor instead of the felony charge. He'd serve 6 months in county jail, suspended contingent on completing inpatient gambling treatment, followed by 2 years probation. He'd also pay full restitution for the car and legal fees. "One more thing," I added. "I want him to pay restitution to the buyer, too. Jake Morrison thought he was helping a military family and ended up with a car worth half what he paid." Ada Chen made a note. "That's unusual, but not unreasonable. Shows good faith." 2 days later, Marcus and his court-appointed attorney accepted the plea agreement. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Walsh, made it clear that this was Marcus's one chance. "Mr. Harley," she said, "your brother's military service and your willingness to support his rehabilitation are the only reasons you're not going to prison today. Don't waste this opportunity." Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I won't, Your Honor." 6 weeks later, I drove Marcus to Prairie Ridge Treatment Center, a 90-day inpatient facility outside Des Moines. It was the best gambling addiction program in Iowa, and it cost $28,000, money I paid from my deployment savings. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked as we pulled into the parking lot. "After everything I did?" I thought about it for a moment. "Because you're my brother, because our parents would want me to, and because everyone deserves a chance to get better, but not a second chance to steal from you." "No," I agreed. "Not that." I returned to Afghanistan the next week, but stayed in touch with Marcus through weekly phone calls monitored by the treatment center. The conversations were difficult at first, lots of anger, blame, and self-pity on his part. But gradually, as the weeks passed, I heard something different in his voice. Accountability, understanding, growth. "I never realized how much I was taking from you," he said during one call. "Not just money, trust, peace of mind, the ability to serve your country without worrying about what I was doing back home. Recovery isn't just about stopping the gambling," I replied. "It's about rebuilding relationships and learning to be someone people can depend on." The day before Marcus graduated from the program, I received a letter from him, handwritten, not email. "Nathan, I know words can't undo what I did, but I need you to know that I understand now. The counselors here helped me see that my gambling wasn't just about money or excitement. It was about avoiding responsibility, avoiding growing up, avoiding the fact that I'd been using your guilt about our parents to manipulate you for years. You were 17 when they died, just a kid yourself, but you stepped up and took care of me. I was 15 and I let you carry that burden for 12 years while I did whatever I wanted, knowing you'd always bail me out. The car was just the last straw. I'd already stolen your teenage years, your early 20s, your peace of mind. The car was the only thing left that you valued, so I took that too. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a relationship when you get back. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that I can be the brother you deserve to have all along. The person who stole your car is gone. I killed him in here, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But he needed to die so someone better could take his place. I love you, brother. Marcus." I read that letter 3 times, sitting in my bunk at Fob Shank while my teammates slept around me. For the first time since our parents died, I felt like Marcus and I might actually have a future as brothers. When I returned from deployment 6 months later, Marcus was waiting at the airport. He looked different, healthier, calmer, present in a way I hadn't seen since before our parents' accident. We hugged briefly, and he handed me a cashier's check. $48,000, he said. Full restitution for the car, plus interest, plus the money I stole over the years that you never reported. "Where did you get this?" I've been working 3 jobs since I got out of treatment. Construction during the day, grocery store evenings, cleaning offices overnight, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Aunt Karen let me stay in her basement rent-free so everything could go to paying you back. I looked at the check, then at my brother. "This is too much. I never asked for—" "I know, but I needed to do it. For me, not just for you." That evening we drove to my apartment complex, the same place where Marcus had taken what he thought was my car. I led him to Mrs. Chen's garage and opened the door. There sat my 2019 Mustang GT, exactly as I'd left it 8 months earlier. Marcus stared at it for a long moment. "You knew. The whole time you knew what I was planning." "I suspected. I hoped I was wrong. But you set up the trap anyway. I protected what was mine and gave you a choice. You chose poorly, faced consequences, and learned from them. That's how growth works." Marcus nodded. Slowly. "Can I ask you something? Why did you come back? Why didn't you just write me off and start fresh somewhere else?" I thought about it, watching the sunset reflect off the Mustang's pristine paint job. "Because family helps family. The difference is, real family helps each other become better people, not enablers of each other's worst impulses. And now? Now you get to prove that the person who wrote me that letter is real. Not with money or promises, but with consistent actions over time." 2 years later, Marcus completed his probation with no violations. He'd maintained his sobriety, held steady employment, and even started dating a woman named Lisa who worked at the treatment center as a counselor. They met in group therapy. She was recovering from her own gambling addiction. On the anniversary of his arrest, Marcus called me. I was stationed at Fort Campbell by then, having extended my enlistment for another 4 years. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, but also for not making it easy, for forcing me to face consequences, for letting me earn my way back instead of just forgiving me because we're family. You're welcome. And Nathan, I need you to know something. That night at the casino, when the police arrested me, when they told me you'd reported the car stolen, for just a second I was furious. I thought, how could my own brother do this to me? And now I know it was the most loving thing you could have done. If you just bailed me out again, if you'd covered for me or minimized it, I'd still be gambling. I'd probably be dead or in prison by now. Tough love isn't supposed to feel good, I said. For either person. No, but it works. 5 years after the arrest, Marcus called with different news. He and Lisa were engaged. He'd been promoted to supervisor at the construction company. He'd bought a house, nothing fancy, but his own place. And he wanted to ask me something. Will you be my best man? I was quiet for a moment, thinking about the journey we'd both taken to get to this point. Are you sure? After everything? Especially after everything. You're the reason I'm alive to have a wedding. Then yes, I'd be honored. The wedding was small, held in the backyard of the house Marcus had bought with money he'd earned through honest work. During his speech, he talked about second chances and the difference between enabling and loving someone enough to let them fail. My brother Nathan taught me that family means holding each other accountable, he said, raising his glass toward me. It means loving someone enough to let them face consequences. It means being there for the redemption, not just the fall. After the reception, as Lisa and Marcus were saying goodbye to guests, Marcus pulled me aside. I have something for you, he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a deed to a small cabin on a lake outside Cedar Rapids. What's this? Remember that $48,000 I paid you back? You never cashed the check. I'd forgotten about that. The check had been sitting in my desk drawer for 5 years, a symbolic gesture I'd never needed to collect on. I invested it, Marcus continued. Been managing it carefully, getting advice, watching it grow. This cabin came up for sale last month, and I thought maybe it could be our family place. Somewhere we could bring our kids someday, teach them to fish, tell them stories about their grandparents. I looked at the deed, then at my brother. For the first time since our parents died, I saw not the kid I'd had to take care of, but a man I could depend on. Equal partners? I asked. Equal partners. 10 years after Marcus stole my car, we were sitting on the dock at that cabin, watching his 3-year-old daughter Emma try to catch fireflies in the twilight. Lisa was inside, pregnant with their second child. My wife Sarah, a nurse I'd met during a training exercise, was helping Emma with her net. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked suddenly. Regret what? Having me arrested, putting me through all that. I watched Emma shriek with delight as she caught her first firefly of the evening. Do you? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. No, it saved my life. But I sometimes wonder if there was an easier way. Probably, I said, but easier doesn't always mean better. And easy solutions to hard problems usually don't last. True. As the stars came out over the lake, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The theft, the arrest, the treatment, the slow rebuilding of trust, the years of supervised visits, monitored phone calls, and careful conversations. It had been hard. Harder than just giving Marcus money and hoping for the best. Harder than cutting him off completely and starting fresh. But it had been worth it, because sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to make someone's life easier. Sometimes you have to let people face the full weight of their choices. Sometimes you have to watch them fall completely before they can learn to stand on their own. And sometimes, if you're patient enough and strong enough to endure the hard years, you get to watch them become the person they were always capable of being. The person who wrote that letter from treatment wasn't the same person who stole my car, but he wasn't entirely different either. He was the same brother, finally grown up, finally ready to carry his own weight, finally worthy of the trust I'd always wanted to give him. That night, as we locked up the cabin and prepared to head home, Marcus handed me something, a small wrapped box. What's this? Open it. Inside was a key ring with 2 keys and a note. For the brother who taught me the difference between helping and enabling. Thank you for saving my life the hard way. 1 key was to Marcus's house. The other was to mine. He'd had a copy made years ago when I'd given him emergency access, but had never used it. I don't understand, I said. Family helps family, Marcus said, echoing the text message that had started this whole journey. But real family earns the right to help. As we drove home under the stars, our family sleeping peacefully in the back seat, I realized something I'd never fully understood before. The best revenge isn't destroying someone who's wronged you. It's refusing to enable their self-destruction while giving them every opportunity to become someone better. Sometimes, the most satisfying ending isn't watching your enemy fall. It's watching your brother rise.